Getting well-developed abs is a common training goal, not just for aesthetic purposes but also to have a strong core to stabilize you during compound exercises and in the performance of the sports you engage in. But there are so many abdominal exercises and theories out there that it becomes confusing to figure out how you can effectively train your abdominal muscles. So in today's video, I will discuss how you can approach your abdominal training for complete abdominal development and to develop a stronger core. But before we head into specific exercises, we need to understand the anatomy of your abs because there are multiple muscles to be trained. First, we have the rectus abdominis. This is the so to speak six-pack muscle since it consists of 6 to 8 blocks of muscle tissue. The main function of your rectus abdominis is spinal flexion. People often wonder whether they can specifically target the upper and lower portion of the rectus abdominis. If we look at research done on this topic, we see that selective activation of the rectus abdominis is possible. The upper and lower portion of your rectus abdominis are innervated by different nerves, so you can't place emphasis on certain regions based on how you train. Movements in which you train the abs from the bottom up target the lower abs slightly more, whereas top-down ab movements target the upper region of your rectus abdominis slightly more. Next to the rectus abdominis, we also have the obliques, and the obliques are responsible for torso rotation. The obliques are commonly neglected in training because we are often focused on just vertical and horizontal movement patterns in strength training, but we also want to be strong in rotation. Another region of the abs to be trained is the transverse abdominis. This is a deep underlying abdominal muscle that can be seen as your body's natural weightlifting belt since it is a broad muscular sheath around the abdominal wall. The transverse abdominis helps stabilize your spine during movements of flexion and rotation. It is active in most abdominal exercises. So now that we know the main abdominal muscles and their functions, let's look into how we can actually train your abs. Let's start with discussing the idea that just doing compound exercises is enough for targeting your abs. There is something to say for just focusing on compound movements to create a strong core. After all, when you perform exercises like the deadlift, squats, and overhead press, your abdominal muscles need to stabilize your spine. But let's look at your abdominal muscles like any other muscle group that you train in your routine, like let's say the back. You wouldn't just do deadlifts if developing your back was the goal. You'd also train the back through movements with larger ranges of motion and different angles. The same holds true for your abdominal muscles. If you want to develop your abs, then you can benefit from training your abs from different angles and through an active range of motion. Now, it is worth reminding that just doing abdominal training won't result in abdominal fat loss. A 2011 study investigated the effects of training the abdominal muscles 5 times per week. After a 6-week period, no significant decrease in abdominal fat was found. So just training abs won't locally burn fat. You need a calorie deficit for fat loss. The reason we train the abs is not for slimming down your core because that's mostly a nutrition game. We want to train the abs to develop the underlying abdominal muscles so that once you are lean, you have abs that are more apparent and have overall improved core strength. For balanced abdominal training, I would typically suggest 3 movement patterns in your routine. Training direct spinal flexion, training direct torso rotation, and training anti-flexion. The spinal flexion exercise will help us train your rectus abdominis. The torso rotation will be effective for training your obliques and also improving your capacity to produce rotational force. And anti-flexion exercises allow you to train maintaining a stable core and resisting flexion like you would do in typical compound exercises like the overhead press and squats. In all of these movements, the transverse abdominis will also be active in providing support for the spine. The key with all these abdominal exercises is that there should be a component of progressive overload. Just doing the same bodyweight exercises over and over again won't force new adaptations in abdominal size and strength. Like any other muscle, we need to continuously overload the abs for them to develop. Now, about spinal flexion exercises, I want to give you a gym and home workout option. If you have access to a gym, then I'm a big fan of doing cable ab crunches. In this exercise, you want to focus on fully extending and flexing your spine to train your rectus abdominis with a full range of motion. A common mistake with the cable ab crunch is that people maintain a neutral spine while moving the weight down. This likely stems from how we are taught to maintain a neutral spine during exercises like the deadlifts and squats, but with the cable ab crunch, you actually want to flex the spine. So focus on bringing your elbows towards your knees during the exercise to effectively flex your spine. Over time, you can increase the weight you lift to overload the abdominal muscles. If you train at home, you have several options and what exercise to use will depend on your current fitness capacity. Something like a jackknife crunch is great for training spinal flexion, but is also quite advanced. If jackknife crunches are tough, you can also start with lying knee raises. A lying knee raise allows the pelvis to come off the floor so that there is active spinal flexion. When you are able to do 15 knee raises, transition to doing leg raises. Once you're able to do 15 leg raises, you should be able to do jackknife crunches, which can also be done while holding a dumbbell to overload your abs further. It's worth mentioning that these spinal flexion exercises might be less suited towards those with pre-existing low back issues. So if you have pre-existing low back issues, then I'd suggest you consult with your physician or physical therapist before engaging in these spinal flexion exercises or any abdominal exercise for that matter. Next up, we train torso rotation, and if you train in a gym setting, then I would suggest using something like a cable wood chop. This is a cable abdominal exercise that's easy to overload. In terms of performance, set the cable around chest height and take a big step away from the cable. While keeping your hips mostly stable, rotate the upper body towards the cable machine and come right back to the other side. A common mistake here is turning back with your torso too far, resulting in the cable resting on your sides and you lose tension on your obliques. Stop the movement before the cable touches your sides. If you find it difficult to stand in a stable position during wood chops, you can also perform this exercise in a half-kneeling position for a more stable foundation. For home training, a good option for training rotation is doing diagonal lying leg raises. If you have a pull-up bar, doing hanging oblique raises is another excellent option to intensify your obliques training, but also something like Russian ab twists is a good option. The third and last movement pattern I suggest you incorporate in your abs training routine is anti-flexion. These are movements like planks and ab wheel rollouts in which your abdominal muscles don't necessarily go through an active range of motion, but have to resist motion at the spine, so there's an isometric contraction. This is valuable because also during the performance of compound exercises, we need to be able to resist spinal flexion. The plank is an excellent way to train anti-flexion, but once you're able to plank for more than 45 seconds, the challenge needs to increase. This is where something like an ab wheel rollout can come into play. You maintain a plank position throughout the movement, but because you roll forward with your body weight, the exercise becomes a greater challenge for the abs. If you train at home, you can also do towel ab rollouts on the floor that slides for the same training effect. There's also value in doing anti-rotation and anti-extension exercises in your training plan, so you can also choose to replace a plank with a Pallof press or weighted hollow hold. But if I had to choose just one isometric abdominal exercise, then it would be an anti-flexion movement like planks or the rollouts, because we need strong anti-flexion abilities in the performance of many of our compound movements. A simple way to structure these abdominal exercises is by doing one movement after each of your training sessions. So if you have 3 full body training sessions in a week, you can add a different abdominal exercise to the end of each session. And that was all for today's video. I hope this gives you a clear understanding of how you can go about effective abdominal training. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Also, if you found this video helpful, then leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video.